Hello everybody and welcome to another comedian's interview for my blog and podcast Arichcomiclife. My name is Richard Gill and my blog describes my experiences of watching over 1,000 stand-up comedians and counting over the last 46 years. I'm delighted to welcome my guest today, the wonderful comedian Mr. Nathan Cassidy. Yes! Hello, mate.
Yes.
How are you? You're all right?
As effusive with your applause as you were when you come to live comedy. You're brilliant, Richard. You know, everyone can learn from you in terms of your. I see some interviews and it's just like I interview some people and I know them well and they start very, very downbeat, very morose. I'm like, oh dear. But of course, all comedians are depressed. But at least we're going to start like, yay! Well, we're not depressed, Richard. We're not.
You're very kind, and I hope the next 45 minutes or so is going to be very enthused.
I will do my best.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for doing this interview. As I say, it's going to be about 45 minutes, and I'd like to ask you firstly, how did you become a comedian in the first place, please?
Well, there's a question. Well, yes, I could answer that in a standard way, in that, you know, I did it at school, did stuff at university, and I was at university actually with Marcus Brigstock, and so he was in a little gang called Club Seals with Danny Robbins and Dan Tetzel. So they did stand up with a few other people, and I wasn't in their gang, so I wasn't in the kind of drama. I wasn't in their gang, basically. So I was kind of doing theatre and making excuses for not being a stand-up, although I knew inside I wanted to be a stand-up. I just didn't take that leap. Yeah. And I think even if stand-up is deeply inside of you, which it is with me, I think it still takes a bit of a leap. You need to sometimes be shoved over the edge. So I didn't do it at university, but as soon as I got to London, I knew I wanted to be in London because I knew I just wanted to do stand-up. So I started then. So that's, I guess, the standard answer. But having done psychomedy and having talked to many comedians about the psychology of comedy, I can't not, address my own psychology as a comedian, I guess. And, I've talked on psychomedy and, in various of my own podcasts, I've touched upon what I think makes me a comedian. I think it's inside you, number one. It's genetics, but it's also, I think, certain things of my upbringing. One or two that I talk about in my latest show, Bumblebee. Yeah. I got love from my family. But I didn't ever hear the words "I love you," so it wasn't an obvious thing. I never heard the words "I love you." Don't feel sorry for me, Richard. I'm very happy, and they're a nice. Notice how I said a nice family. That's damning with faint praise, isn't it? They're a nice family. No, they're a loving family, some of them. But I never heard the words "I love you." However, when I made people laugh from as early as I can remember, I can't remember anything much before I was 10 or 11, which suggests I don't know what that suggests, but the one or two memories I have in terms of the earliest memories, making my family laugh was love for me. Yeah. So the earliest memory I have is I think I was singing a song based on the lyrics of the song Fame. So I was singing "I Want to Live Forever," and I changed the lyrics to "I Want to Live Till I Die." Hilarious. However, I was only 6, bear with me. And my mom looked at me she laughed and looked me in the eye, and I thought, that's love. You know? So all those little things I'm told stories of how after that I would be at weddings, I'd be 6, 7 years old, and this may sound like I was an annoying little prick. I promise you I wasn't. Maybe I was. But I would take people aside to a different room in the wedding, and I would entertain them with whatever is in the room. And people say to me now, you weren't annoying. You were genuinely entertaining. So I guess I was doing that to, for love. And why else do we do this now than to equate the applause with love?
It is amazing how comedy affects everybody. I mean, I've recently been talking to the Noise Next Door, and I said to them that when I saw them in Carlisle, Carlisle's my home city, and I went to see them there. I was in a really low place. I'd just lost my mum, and sorry. Thank you. And I went to see them, and I sat in the back, which was very rare for me, with a pint of beer in my hand, and somebody else in the audience knew I was there, and so they when they yelled out the suggestions, this person mentioned my name, and they went, "Oh my God, is Rich in the audience?" And they included me in a song about Carlisle, which cheered me up no end for that particular night. And it's amazing how it does affect you, all these memories and everything. And I suppose that's why I write the blog. But it's a wonderful answer that you've given there. It's fascinating.
Well, you'd be a fascinating person on Psychomedy. So if and when we do season 3, I think we should get you on, because watching so much comedy and not doing the comedy, that's a fascinating angle. So yeah,
that would be
you got yourself a booking.
I'd be honoured, my friend.
It may not be a paid booking, but it's a booking.
That's excellent, my friend. Thank you very much. So you become a comedian. What was your first gig like? Can you remember your first gig?
I can, absolutely. I think everyone remembers their first gig. I came to London. I booked in straight away, not knowing what the gigs were and not having been to these places. And so I booked in, would you believe, at the Bedford Banana Cabaret. Well, certainly in the venue where Banana Cabaret is. So what a place for a first gig. Now, I said I wasn't an annoying prick, but I'm going to sound like an annoying prick in my first gig, because this is a hard thing to admit, but people that saw me do comedy in 2000, so I did comedy for the first time in 99, so it was 99, 2000. Yeah. And then subsequently I dropped out for nine years, maybe more of that later. But yes, 99, I was passing the Oswald Boateng shop in town. And there were these suits. There was these purple suit and a bright purple suit and a bright orange suit. And Boateng suits are like £1,000, £2,000, but they were selling them off. And I thought, why are they selling them off so cheaply? They're only £100. They were selling them off so cheaply because they were hideous, garishly coloured suits that nobody wanted. However, I thought, that's comedy, isn't it? That's comedy. I'm going to get one of these suits. And I hadn't actually written much material. I was just concentrating on the material I could buy from Oswald Boateng. So I bought the suit. So I thought, I look the part. I haven't written much material. I don't really know who I'm supposed to be as a comedian. But I had the idea that maybe I'll be... Not that I ever watched much of Lee Evans, but I thought I'll be a bit Lee Evans-y. I'll be a bit all over the place. I'll be a bit improvised, like Lee Evans isn't, obviously. But I had this idea in my head that was just like, I'll just get on and be entertaining. I've done theatre, I can do stand-up. So I turned up at this gig at the Bedford, obviously a huge venue too. I think that was back in the day where there was just, audience up there, audience down here. There was a lot of audience in. And the guy saw me, the guy who was running the gig, won't mention his name, and he said, "Hey man, I don't know who you are, but you clearly look like you know what you're doing." Because I had this suit on. And clearly someone wearing a garishly coloured suit, they've got to be not shit, right? They can't just be winging it, surely. So he said, "Yes, you look like you know what you're doing, so I'm going to put you on to close." So close either the first half or the second half. Wow. So there I go, my first gig. And I don't know what the hell I was talking about. I think it was something about Purple Ronnie was half my material. I thought I'd bat back and forward with the audience, which didn't work. I got 0 laughs. However, I did get 1 laugh when I said, about 3 minutes into the 5 minutes, "This is going well, isn't it?" And I got a huge laugh, and I thought, oh, that's it. I don't have to overthink this. I've been overthinking it too much. I've got a suit. I've thought about this weird kind of material. Just relax. Yeah. Just connect with the audience. Say when things aren't going well. And in that moment, I thought, oh, from thinking I couldn't do this for the first 3 minutes, now I can do this. And that's all I needed, at least for a couple of years, until I dropped out for 9 years. But yeah.
That is incredible that you play such a prestigious venue
for your
first gig. Because normally... comedians who are starting out, some of them would do 5-minute routines in pubs, but if you're closing as well, that is extraordinary, because it is all about experience, good or bad. I always say to them, to the comedians I've talked to, it is all about experience, good or bad, even if you have bad nights. It is all experience, and you can gain from it, and you become a better comedian from that. Did you go through the pub circuit? Did you do lots of 5 and 10 minutes to gain the experience?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. After that, I learned. Not every gig is going to be Banana Cabaret. So my second gig, was at a tiny place, and I thought, I wish I'd started here, in front of 10 people rather than probably over 100 people. But absolutely, I mean, I work with a few newer comedians from time to time, and I always say to them, there's no rush. Comedians are always in a rush to get there, and unfortunately you can't rush these things. I don't know of anyone that's been able to rush, storming it from the first gig. It takes time,
Sure. To date, what has been your best and worst gig? I can't ever imagine you having a bad gig, because you're so enthusiastic and confident on stage. You saw me. You saw me emceeing, didn't you, a couple of weeks ago? And of course, I'm enthusiastic when I'm emceeing. Maybe when I'm doing my shows, I'm not quite so big. Yes, not many. No, I don't really have a death story, and I wish I had one. So many people have brilliant death stories. However, there are, of course, bad gigs, and maybe I guess sometimes, interestingly, good gigs that can become bad gigs with kind of who's in the audience and who will say something afterwards. So that's the most interesting thing, I think. So I did. There's amazing gigs, playing to a full comedy store or whatever. They're always like the gigs, gigs you remember, and those club gigs are amazing. However, I do look back at the shows I do more than the gigs, I think, for the real kind of deep experiences that I get with an audience, that I think, I'm really have achieved something there, and I've touched people on a different level. So. There was a show I did in 2016 called 42, where I had 42 different subjects on cards, and I asked the audience to pick 10 of the 42 subjects, and I would do a different show every night based on those 10 things from the 42. So all I'd done is learn the 42 bits, or knew what I was vaguely talking about with the 42 bits, and all I had to do, they were all about the meaning of life. It was called 42, it was about the meaning of life, and so all I had to do was connect the dots. So that was, back in the day, I hated repeating shows. I got bored of shows very easily. By the time I got to Edinburgh, I was bored of the shows already. Maybe I was doing too many previews. So I thought, I need to do a show where it's different every night. And not completely improvised, but semi-improvised around this. Did the show. And I won't mention his name, but a very, one of the biggest comedy critics there. And I did this show, and the you know what's coming, don't you? It had gone really well, the run. I was like, this is a great show. I'm enjoying this. The audience are enjoying it, and they're seeing that it's a little bit clever. It's a little bit more than a normal show. And I ended the show by walking the audience out of the venue. I said, "What's the meaning of life?" Well, I'm going to show you. I walked the audience out of the venue, down the road, down Cowgate, to the club at the end of Cowgate. So we walked through a busy courtyard. The the courtyard parted. It was biblical, Richard. Brilliant. It was biblical. We walked down. We got to a club, and I said, "This is the meaning of life." Basically, without explaining it, I was like, "This is the meaning of life." Just all being together, having fun in a club. That was kind of the point of the show. Anyway. And I played to one of the biggest comedy critics, and I thought, "Well, here we go. My first 5 stars from this major comedy critic. It can't be anything else. It literally can't be anything else." And then the next day, of course, the critic came out 3 stars. Obviously, could have been worse, but obviously totally unusable. And what it said was, Nathan Cassidy, known for his tricks, must have been tricking us into, because I got the audience to choose from the 42 cards, and it was like this. He must have been cheating it. And of course,
there's no route of appeal
No.
with a I think I may, for the first and only time, dropped him a note going, dude. I didn't call him dude. Bastard, whatever I called him. I wasn't cheating it. I because the review was all about the maths, about how if it was impossible for me to do that based on mathematics.
Yeah.
And he was like, it wasn't possible. I was like, it is possible. I've just learned 42 bits because I'm stupid, and I've only learned, I'm only going to perform 10 of them. So yes, the best gigs can turn into it. It just it makes you so flat. You just think, I've just performed one of the shows of my life ever, and I've really connected, and I've achieved something that it's just the only thing people will remember is that review, really, which said he was cheating. What I
love about your comedy, and just listening to you now, is your enthusiasm for making people laugh. When you go out on a stage, you are determined to make them laugh through all your enthusiasm and your positiveness. And it's similar to my blog. I mean, I couldn't believe the success of my blog, but I was just very, very positive. I had a great big spreadsheet of all the comedians of every gig I'd listed, and I had to go on a writing course to do the blog, a half-day writing course, and everybody around me was reviewers. And the woman who ran the course said, "Oh, we've forgotten about you." I said, "Well, you invited me, and I can tell you I'm not a reviewer, I'm not a critique, I'm not a reporter. I'm a member of the audience out to have a good time." And that's exactly what my blog comes across as, an enthused, because it's so positive. Listening to you now, you're like a visual and audio version of the blog. It's so full of life. It's wonderful. How do you remember all your jokes and routines? Do you have a system of remembering them?
Well, at university, I had a very good memory. So I got a first in my degree, which annoyed my friends at the time because I put in far less work. So I was just it really wasn't hard work. I had a bit of a photographic memory for essays. So I remember in my exams, in A-levels and in my degree, I would just word for word know what I was saying. So when I started my comedy career many years ago, I think that memory was there. But then I got very overconfident, Richard. You can get overconfident with your memory. So when was it? 2015, I was playing to probably only about it was like a fringe gig. It was like 100 people. It was 20 minutes into this show, and I was, I hate to say it, Richard, storming it. I hate to say it, storming it, Richard. Storming it, couldn't have been better. And then I literally, what's next? I have no idea. I'd done this show like 10, 15 times.
Yeah.
What's next? I have no idea. And usually in gigs, obviously, or in shows, it's just like, well, I can't remember what's next, but I'll keep talking and it will come back to me. It's not a problem. I just went, I can't think of what's next. I can't think of anything to say. So I joked about it with the audience. Well, I've genuinely forgotten. Ha ha ha, the laughs came back. Oh, no, I really have forgotten. Ha 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 ha. And it's like, no, guys, I really have forgotten. And I've got to just stand here and think silently. And suddenly the audience went, well, this isn't very good. I've totally forgotten that you were literally storming it, Nathan, 8 seconds ago, because you're now clearly rubbish.
Wow.
I just stood there, and it was probably only, but it was over a minute. And can you imagine a minute of silence from a comedian?
That's
just
awful.
Because it was a show that had a story. It was like, well, I can't just now start talking about how, Amazon is bad. There's like something nothing to do with the story. I'm like, I can't think of what's next. So ever since then, even though I've got a fairly good memory, I will have, although it's getting worse now, I'll have a bit of paper always in kind of new material gigs. I'll have, in shows that I've done 1 million times, I'll have the bullet points in my back pocket.
Yeah.
So I've never needed them, but there's the comfort right there in my back pocket. Yeah.
It's weird because other than the blog, the most creative thing I've done is I wrote a play which we put on for Comic Relief, myself and my mate, and
oh, nice.
woman directed it. It was originally going to be for Edinburgh. It's just a half-hour play. It's basically about me who comes down to London and can't get a job. I've got a very successful girlfriend who is in a very good job, but I've never had an interview in my life. So each scene is me going for a job interview, and the first part of it is me running out and terrified in the waiting room and starting talking to the audience and building a monologue. And of course, the first night I ran out, I forgot the words. Don't ever write monologues, because it's like, and I'm thinking the difference between and I'd written the thing, but the difference between the written word on the page and winging it as a comedian, there is a difference there, because the audience shouldn't know that the comedian is winging it, because, as you say, you slow down, you can admit to them, and then as long as they're on your side, I'm guessing, you can say what you like. Yeah, do you agree with that? Yeah.
Oh, no, absolutely. In any other scenario, in any gig, there's just no way you would have a moment like that. You'd be like, oh, what's come next? Oh, doesn't matter. We'll move on to the next bit. But this was just like, I've never experienced anything like that. It's like, I can't think of a single word that I can tell you. But yes, you learn from your failures.
It's all experience, my friend.
Indeed.
Let's move on. I've got quite a long question here, but it involves all your awards. So let me read
amazing.
all this out.
Please.
This is great.
Please fill your boots.
So in 2007, you won the Sir Michael Caine Award for New Writing in Theatre, and have been nominated. Congratulations! And have been nominated and won numerous comedy awards during your career, including the Malcolm Hardie Award in 2012. Fantastic.
Yes.
The winner and 5 times nominee for Best Solo Show at the Buxton Fringe, and
Beautiful
winner
Buxton Fringe
of the Best Show at the Leicester Comedy Festival in 2020. Congratulations.
Thank you. Although just nominated for Leicester, but it should have been a win. And you're
Was
right,
it only
Richard, to demand a recount.
Well, there we are. But all these nominations are fantastic. What is your view of comedy competitions? Do you think they're a good thing?
Well, I mean, there's comedy competitions, and then, I mean, I guess awards are a kind of competition, although I don't really. I mean, maybe they are. I don't view them as such, really, because I guess you get many nominees, you get 5 winners. I think if you're nominated, as you said, Richard, you've basically won.
Anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I didn't do many competitions. Yeah, when I started in 99, 2000, I did the BBC, and I did maybe one other. And I learned very early on that, again, mentioning no names, it would be like someone would do very badly in a competition and they would get through. And I'd be like, because I was very new, I was like, what's happening here? And you learn, obviously, that, you know, it's not all about that gig, even in a competition. So if I'm working with a new act, I'm like, don't worry if you don't get through. Don't worry. Yeah. You can have a great gig and not get through. You could have a terrible gig, as I saw back in the day, and get through, because it's based on more than that. It's based on whether the industry, if it is industry that are judging you, recognise you as a good comedian. So the comedian has subsequently gone on to be a very famous comedian. He absolutely died on his ass, but then he got through in the competition. And at the time, I was like, well, competitions are corrupt. Well, they're not corrupt. It doesn't really matter. It's I'll say to new comics, don't put too much on competitions. You know. However, do put too much on many award nominations, as you say, Richard, because that is the benchmark of success. But I mean, there are many examples of people that haven't won the Edinburgh Comedy Award. There are many examples of people that haven't been nominated for stuff, or indeed haven't got the career that maybe all the other comics think they deserve. And there's been a bit in the industry recently about, you know, people moaning about certain people getting opportunities and things not being totally fair. I think comedy is more fair than a lot of things, but of course it's not totally fair. It's life. Life isn't fair.
Exactly.
You can die on your ass and you'll get through because your mate is on the judging panel.
Yeah.
That's not corruption. That's life. It's everything. You could be working in a bank, the government. You could be working down the supermarket, and you'd be promoted because the boss is your mate. Stop moaning about it and just try and get some enjoyment out of it.
Exactly. That is a perfect answer. Thank you. Let's move on to Edinburgh. I've been very fortunate enough to go to the Edinburgh Fringe every year since 2005, and it's basically my holiday. I go up there for a week and I see about 50 shows, so by the time I come back I'm absolutely shattered. But can you tell me, what was your first Edinburgh Fringe like? What year did you go up? What experience did you have?
So yeah, as I said earlier, I did theatre at university. So I did the first Edinburgh I went to was in '96, where I did a couple of plays, which were interesting plays looking back. But I know this is about stand-up really. But there weren't comedy plays. '97, I wrote a musical, so I took that up and was in that, called DIY the Musical.
Yeah.
So that was the same year as the Full Monty. So we got a double-page spread in the Sun, related to the Full Monty. 2001, yes. So I started in 2000 in London, and then took a two-hander in 2001. And I guess this was illustrative of what my career was going to become.
Right.
I didn't want to start with something standard. I did this show with this other guy, and I said to him, let's do something a bit different. Let's pretend we're... This is ridiculous. Let's pretend we've been on a worldwide search for UK-based comedians, little and large, who were famous in the 70s and 80s. I'm sure everyone on your blog knows who little and large are, but if they're 20 or under or 30 or under, maybe they won't. But they were huge stars, but maybe not so much in 2000. They were very famous in the 80s or whatever. So I said to him, let's pretend we've been on a worldwide search for little and large. So you do your 20 minutes, then let's do some video of you looking for little and large, and then I'll do my 20 minutes, and then it'll be more videos of us looking for little and large, which led us to find little and large in Skegness. There's a video of us finding little and large backstage. Plainly ridiculous. What was I doing? The reviews were like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Why doesn't he just do comedy? Why is he looking for little and large? This is ridiculous. And I at the time was thinking, you're wrong, reviewers. But the reviewers were right. It was plainly ridiculous. And when we found little and large, Large comes backstage.
Wow.
And he's very grumpy because he's just come off the show. It's like, who the f*** are you sticking a camera in my face? Little was just on his way. And genuinely, the camera runs out of battery.
No.
And so just before we get Little in the shot, the camera runs out of battery. We've spent a year doing this. It's ridiculous. And ever since then, ever since buying those purple and orange suits, I'm like, I used to carry a keyboard around me in gigs, and the joke was I couldn't play it. What was I doing? When I started comedy again, I thought, who are my favourite comedians? Strip away all of that nonsense. It's just a comedy is a man or a woman with a microphone, you know?
But what a great idea. Little and Large was brilliant. That's
ridiculous. Great memories. I'm still friends with that comedian. I see him all the time. He's full of joy, and he just went with this idea. Other comedians would have said, what are you talking about, Nathan? Stop it. But yes, he went with it. Great memories, not a great show.
That is wonderful.
We ended up, I think it started at £8, but I think it then, by the end of the Fringe, it was £2. Right. And I think one of the reviewers did mention that. They said, this was back in the day where I don't think there were free shows, where I think we were the pioneer of the free Fringe that year. It was like, no one's coming for £8. No. Can it come for £2?
Yeah. During the pandemic year in 2020, your show Observational was famously the only live show at the 2020 Edinburgh Fringe. How did this come about?
I mean, again, it's like people sometimes look at me as kind of the gimmick guy and, like, you know, looking for... obviously the looking for little and large all the time, but I'm really not. All I am, you say I'm enthusiastic, sometimes I'm not as enthusiastic on stage, but what I am enthusiastic about is doing stand-up comedy. That's all I want to do. That's all I want to do in the industry. If I could just do stand-up comedy and nothing else, don't tell my agent this, but this is all I'd want to do. So I just saw an opportunity, and as Kate Copstick and others have pointed out, it's surprising that other people, particularly in Scotland, didn't see the opportunity that was there, because it was pretty obvious to me that Nicola Sturgeon was about to announce, it was the last week of the Fringe, that we could do a live gig in a courtyard. So I just contacted Alex Petty from the Free Festival, who's always been very supportive, and I've always done my shows with him. And we contacted the manager of the Free Sisters, the Three Sisters on Cowgate, and we saw that opportunity. And I was on holiday with my kids in the Lake District, so it was only an hour from me. So I just said, I'm going to pop up for an hour. I went up on the train, did the gig. The world's comedy press was there. The Times was there, that I could never get in because I don't use PR. Chortle was there. Kate Copstick was there from The Scotsman. Jay Richardson. They were all there. Of course they were there, because they had nothing else to do. Yes, lucky really I don't get nervous, because it would have been a kind of nerve-wracking situation potentially, but I knew it was a good show. It had been kind of it had been already nominated in Leicester, and I'd done it, and it's lovely to get on stage like that and thinking, I'm making a bit of history here, and also with a good show that I can just totally relax and I know people will enjoy. And it was an amazing experience. It was. I went back to the Lake District. My mum was with my kids, and I just was like, I've just had 5 hours of kind of just
fantastic.
What an amazing experience!
It was so
incredible.
missed last year. I mean, I didn't go up, and you could see just how magical the experience is to go. I mean, it must be amazing to perform there, but
the appreciation for that gig, people came up to me afterwards, and I've done one or two other things like that. So I did the same in the Buxton Fringe, where I was the first performer there, and just the levels of appreciation, because it's just a bit of normality in people. And whether off the back of that, I've sold a lot of tickets for this Edinburgh, more than usual. So I think the love is continuing, at least for one Edinburgh.
Fantastic. You've written and performed a solo Edinburgh show every year since 2010. Congratulations again. Describe your writing process, and where do you get your ideas from for the shows? I work with some newer comedians and some more established comedians on their shows sometimes. So I'll probably give them two bits of advice, I guess, for writing shows. Is, I think the main thing is have an idea that you can hang the show off. So what's the main idea? Even if it's a small thing, it can be a very small thing or a big thing. What's the idea? So last year I got burgled, and although it was a painful experience, even during the burglary, as I was chasing this guy down the street, I won't ruin the show for you, because I know you'll be coming to see it maybe. But it was like, as a comedian, I thought, well, this is my show for this year. It's that dramatic. It has to, whatever happens here, this is my show for this year. And it is. So it helps you if you have that. Not that the whole show is about my burglary, but I can hang things off that. So seeing the burglar, chasing the burglar, crime, true crime, and bits of the pandemic. Why are you burgling somebody in a pandemic? I didn't think that was still possible. So all of these things, you can talk about the pandemic, but from it, so then it becomes like a bit of a jigsaw, and that's what Observational was very much like. I had this idea, which was the ending of the show, and I thought that's a good idea, and then it becomes more of a jigsaw, and it's easier to write. And so once you've got that idea, I just think it's all about setting the bar for yourself. So I'll say to any comedian, who's your favourite comedian? And when you're writing a show, it's not always possible, but could you imagine that comedian saying those words? Not that it's necessarily in that style, but is it good enough? Is it good enough for your favourite comedian to say those words? And if it's not, maybe scratch it out and aim higher. Keep aiming higher and set that bar as high as possible for yourself. That's brilliant. That's a great way of bettering yourself as a comedian, by judging it by thinking of your favourite comedian saying it. That's wonderful.
You don't always achieve it, but
No.
I think, you can go into a show then thinking, well, I've done my best here. I can imagine my favourite comedian saying this,
Yeah. You said before that you rarely get nervous. Do you ever get nervous before a gig, and if so, how do you cope with your nerves?
I never get nervous before gigs. No, I mean, maybe I did back in the day, but my memory fades as the nerves. Yeah, maybe I got nervous before that Banana Cabaret gig, suddenly thinking, what the fuck am I doing? If I feel like I'm winging it, that's when I'll be nervous. But of course, I've been doing comedy now for 72 years. So it's like I'm no longer winging it. You're nervous in situations where you're not ready. If you're prepared, then there's really, other people deal differently with nerves, and as well, kind of, I've got kids, I've got other things going on in my life, and it's a big deal, my career, but if my kids are healthy, then really it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So I get nervous for my kids, or I get nervous if my kids are going into hospital or whatever. Comedy, it's like, it's enjoyable. I get down when I don't do it. So the feeling of going to gigs, the feeling just before I go to a gig, even if looks like it's going to be a horrendous gig, I just think, thank goodness I'm doing this, rather than my old job, working in the bank or whatever.
You have had a very long comedy career, which is wonderful. To date, what's been your comedy highlight?
I guess you only look back at the last year or two. It all seems to be, it's hopefully the best show you've ever done. There's been probably one or two exceptions along those 10 shows or whatever, but certainly the last 2 years has been a kind of wonderful journey. It's from a fairly low point, personally. One or two things happened that I won't go into detail with. I'm going to keep it enthusiastic with but one or two people did do some horrible things to me, and I was a very low point personally. And it's interesting actually, because what I did was a couple of years ago, I did a show kind of based on that. I wanted to address those experiences, because that's of course what a comedian would naturally do. But I did it at the Leicester Comedy Festival, I think in 2019. It's 2019, and I got off stage having done it for the first time, and I said to my producer or my technician, I said, I'm never doing that show again. He said, why? You stormed it, Nathan. As I always seem to do in this interview. I'm always storming gigs. And I said, personally, it's just bad for my mental health if I'm talking about this issue. So what I immediately did is just dealt with what was going on. I forgave that situation, and forgiveness. I'm not a Christian man, but forgiveness is very powerful. It rids you of any negativity. And then I turn that into Observational, which is a very positive, uplifting show. And so for the last 2 years, I've all been about creating things that are uplifting. There's lots of dark subject matter in there, but ultimately I want to produce a show that is funny, but more so uplifting. That's what people said about Observational. And then having the kind of magical things that have happened. The pandemic has obviously been awful, but one or two things have happened out of it personally for me. As you say, the only person in Edinburgh, the first show out of lockdown, but it's more the connection that I've got with audiences through Observational, which means so much more than the awards and the nominations and the great reviews, even though I keep mentioning them. But no, so the last 2 years has been a highlight, and then Bumblebee carries on that story. So personally and professionally, I'm in an incredible place now, like the best place of my career and life. So it's you can turn things around, people.
That is wonderful. Well, that is so good. Tell me more about your podcast, Psychomedy. Psycomedy, Psychomedy. Great name. How did it come about? And why that particular subject for a podcast?
Well, it came about. You say it's a great name. It's often the name. I pitched the idea to a podcast production company, Pod People Productions, and as soon as I said Psychomedy, his eyes lit up and went, "That's good. I don't care what it's about. That's good. It's a deal." So yes. I did psychology at university, never really used it since. I worked in a bank and never really used my degree. I did really love my degree, although I was winging it to a certain extent and just going around doing theatre all the time. But I loved my degree, loved comedy, so it was a natural fit to talk to comedians about the psychology of comedy. And yeah, it's been incredible. We set it up so we're not looking at each other like some psychoanalysis sessions. And people in those situations, they'll just sit back, lie back sometimes with their eyes closed, and they'll be so open. Some of these discussions have been, I get to the end of them, I'm like, oh my God, But I did it online as well during the pandemic. I did a kind of daily show called The Daily Dose. So I talked to comedians all the way around the world. And even though we were looking at each other sometimes on the Zoom gave us a bit of distance. So people would really open up.
Right.
I had so many amazing ones, but like Brendan Burns, you got to listen to that episode. It's like an hour and a half. Like, oh my God, dude!
I was just going to mention him. It was extraordinary. Yeah.
It's extraordinary, and subject that's very close to my heart. Certain things that I've been through in my life, and just like, and things that people have mentioned. It's. I'm just thinking of all the examples now, but please listen to Psychomedy. I'm really proud of it, and a lot of people have been really thankful afterwards and went, thanks, Nathan. Some of them haven't, but I revealed too much. But no, they've all kind of said, I talked about stuff there that I didn't know I was going to talk about, so thank you, and they feel better afterwards.
Yeah. I think as well. Presenting it, so if you're the interviewer or the person who's controlling the podcast, I think it must be exhausting for you as well, asking the questions and trying to get, because you're using your psychology degree, and it must be. You must be trying to not probe, but trying to get the best out of the answers that you're asking for the comedians, and that can be quite tiring.
Yes, it's mentally tiring, but again, preparation. I do a lot of preparation for each interview, so I do hours of preparation which I won't use, and that puts you in a good place. And then it's just all about listening, because like the Brendan Burns interview, I thought we were just going to have a fun discussion about Australia,
exactly,
and then it turns into something else, and you just then have to call on your degree, call on your life experience, and just listen and let them talk. Like in any good psychoanalysis or any good therapy session, it's not being told, I'm now going to tell you what to do, I'm now going to cure you. It's listening, and out of that listening will come the answers. So it's I miss it. We're in between series at the moment.
I would love to be a subject, as you say. That would be wonderful.
We'll get season 3 just for you, Richard. Just for you. Yeah.
Thank you. How have you found online gigs as opposed to live gigs? Have you done many online gigs?
Yes, I did a few. I'd say I don't miss them. No. Certainly. And the first gig that I did, it made me feel almost like, I did in my first gig, a bit weird, a bit empty, a bit, do I know how to do this? And then all comedians had to realise that was our first gig again, and it will get better. And it immediately got better, and you learn how to do it. You weren't being, I think there was a tendency for me to be too, are you listening? You're making yourselves tea. And just like, if people are listening, they'll just listen, be yourself. And, but I saw some great online gigs, like Abanderman had it nailed down, with all the backdrops and stuff he was doing. So there was amazing things you could do online. So I started doing that as well. But then I started doing corporate online gigs for Christmas parties. And they were paid nicely, but they made my soul die, Richard. So they made me wish for my days in the bank. So I'm glad those are over. But I needed the money because the government weren't supporting me.
Exactly.
So
that's a disgrace.
I'm happy to be back to work now properly. Yeah.
Well, it's great, and I'm exactly the same with your argument. I went to a lot of online gigs, but when they first started, there was no audio at all, and when when I would tune in, you could hear the comedy, but of course they couldn't hear the audience laugh. So I was sitting here laughing at four walls, and with my loud laugh, I thought I was going to be taken away.
Oh God!
But,
I'm getting flashbacks. I'm getting flashbacks to that first gig. I was like talking like this. I was like, nobody's laughing because I can't hear anyone. Do you love me? I'm rubbish. Horrendous. But yeah, as soon as people started laughing, it was like, they sorted it out. Yeah. They sorted it out.
But when they cracked it, they did really well. I would go to Sean James's Monday night comedy. I'd go to Oversea Comedy Online, which has been really great, and I would go to Jarlath's Irishman Abroad comedy night, which was superb on a Friday night. But I'm like you, I really miss the live gigs, and to go out on a weekend and with some friends and have dinner, and then just go to the comedy club, sit down and just say, right, please entertain me, because you're in the moment, you just don't know what's going to happen, and that's the magic of it. No, it's I'm sure they'll come back to a certain extent around Christmas and Christmas parties, but I'm sure most comedians would say they don't miss them hugely, but but we'll be ready for the next time if they do. If heaven forbid there's a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th wave coming. Good grief, God forbid. Who are your favourite comedians, past and present?
Well, I mean, many present comedians. I mean, if I had to pick some, it would be Bill Burr, it would be Stuart Lee, it would be Kitson. In the past, I grew up in Birmingham with my mom playing Jasper Carrot and Dave Allen and Billy Connolly. So I guess they were the comedians I grew up with. And I think there was a rumour Jasper Carrot was going to do some more stuff. And that would be amazing. I did try and get in touch with him for Psychomedy, but and obviously Billy Connolly is just a hero and someone that showed that you can just be funny from 20 to 100, for your whole life, and that's all I want to do, kind of, emulate someone like him or Bill Burr or these kind of people who are known. I mean, obviously Billy's done acting and stuff, but these people who are known, principally Stuart Lee, they're stand-ups. They haven't done panel shows. They haven't really done anything else. They're known for their stand-ups. So that's who I would aspire to. But then, of course, in terms of present-day comedians, I have all my, heroes on Psychomedy as well. All the people that I love from the present day, whether that's, all the way around the world, people that some people might not have heard of. We've mentioned Brendan Burns, but, Erica Rhodes in America is great. We had Trevor Simon for the 100th episode.
Brilliant.
Who's a comedy heroes from when I was kids, who are just the most lovely, funny people. But so many others. I mean, Andrew Doyle, Scott Capurro, Callie Beaton, all these people I've had on Psychomedy, Stephen Bailey, Nick Helm, I could go on and on and on. Kim Noble, it's just like, there's so many. As you know, Richard,
well, as I know,
so many interviews, I'm finally getting around to me.
I was just going to say, my first ever comedy gig was aged 7 on a family holiday in Scarborough. We went to see Les Dawson. And then the following year we saw Tommy Cooper, and I just got the bug. And from then on, Billy Connolly, Jasper Carrot. I used to buy all the vinyl records.
Me too. I had the tapes in the car.
I saw him in Carlisle, and then I saw him again in London, and he was nearly 70, and he was just extraordinary, Jasper Carrot, again.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I've never seen him live.
Oh, he's brilliant. And what is great about him is wherever he tours to, he has comedy about the city he's in. And a lot of the great ones do that. Victoria Wood was famous for doing that. I saw her many times.
Oh, Victoria Wood. I mean, I mean, God, I was lucky enough to meet her. After sitting behind her in a theatre show, we went to see Romeo and Juliet.
Wow.
And it wasn't particularly good. So we were laughing at how bad it was. It was a bit like Acorn Antiques. And so I went up to her later that year or the year after. I went, "Do you remember that show?" And she said, "Of course." I was laughing like a drain at how bad it was. I was like, "Yeah, I was the guy behind you."
Yeah.
And we bonded over that. And thank goodness I got to meet her. Another one of my heroes. Used to watch Victoria Wood all the time as a kid.
She was amazing. I went to see Acorn Antiques with a friend of mine, and we were very lucky to get the front row. And Victoria Wood was in it and wrote it, of course, but Julie Walters was Mrs. Overall, and she didn't appear until the second half. And she walked on and sang a song about macaroons and Ozzy Osbourne. And I have never laughed so much. And I actually stopped the show. And she leant over to me and she said, "You're really getting this, aren't you, sir?" And I thought,
she's so lovely. What a loss, but what a great career she's left. All those memories.
Such a loss as well. What she could have done, Victoria Wood.
Absolutely, but she did so much. You know.
Just following on from the question, like me, do you go to a lot of comedy gigs as a member of the audience?
Well, I don't go to as many as you, Richard. Certainly, I don't have much time, and I mean, I guess all the inclination really. It's when I go to a comedy gig now, because I've been involved in so many, you do start to look at it from a technical perspective. I'll see Bill Burr when he's in town. I used to go and see Billy Connolly and Chris Rock and the greats when they're in town. But that said, certainly Edinburgh affords the opportunity to see a lot more, and I do try and enjoy things as much as possible. So in the last week, I have seen 2 things. So it's rare for me to see 2 things in a week. I mean, I haven't done that outside of Edinburgh. So I saw Ricky Gervais. I was lucky enough to sneak into Gervais at the Forum doing his warm-up gig. So I love Gervais's story. Interesting to note, like, a bit of the backlash after that gig. I don't know whether you noticed it, but people were taking some of the jokes. And I'm like, geez, guys, is this what comedy is? He came out and said women aren't funny. That was his opening bit. And it was like, he's joking.
Exactly.
He's joking. He's joking. It's a joke. And
that's the key with him. If you get it, it's wonderful. Yeah.
And then I saw Richard Hardesty, who's a newer comedian.
Oh, yeah.
And really amazing show. I really recommend that to all your listeners to hunt out. Richard Hardesty is going to be taking it to
I have heard
around the world.
Yeah.
Yes, he's had a very complex psychology, and he takes you inside his brain in this show in a way that I've very comparable to Richard Gadd's show, Monkey See, Monkey Do. Really is.
Yeah. The reason I asked the questions is that there's a section in my blog called "The Ones That Got Away," and I've written about 25 comedians who have either sadly passed on or I just haven't had a chance to see. And top of the tree for me was, of course, Morecambe and Wise. I can remember growing up and everybody in the family loving them, whether they were 5 or 80, and I never.
Oh, me too. Morecambe Wise, there's another one that I grew up with. Watching them.
I never got chance to see them. I've seen everything else about them. I've seen plays and read books and everything. I've got all my books behind me. They're the reason I do comedy. But also in there were people like Dave Allen, Frankie Howard. I'd love to have seen Bob Monkhouse. I would love to have seen. But I've never, unfortunately, yet seen Ross Noble. And I must make a point of going, because I love comedians who just take a word and can fly with it, and he is a master of doing that. Early Ross
Noble was mind-blowingly good. It was those moments where you're like, because I saw him just as I started, I think in '99 when I was trying to improvise, and that was like a give-up moment. It's like, you're not 100th as good as this guy, so why are you clogging up the circuit?
It makes you work more. It makes you work harder to get there, as you've said in the past. I've really enjoyed talking to you. You've been a fantastic guest.
Thank you so much.
It's been so good. I could talk to you all night. Just before we go, is there anything else you'd like to say? Do you have any planned gigs or any tours coming up, or where can people find you on social media, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, please hunt out my latest shows. So my latest show is Bumblebee. It's about being burgled during the pandemic, and you can get everything on nathancassidy.com. I wrote a book during lockdown, so do I have a copy here? Of course I have a copy here. It's called Resurrection Post-COVID Diaries by Boris Johnson, available on Amazon, £8.99, and audiobook, £16.99, or free, as I'm finding out, if you have a subscription, and that way I get no money, or very little money, so don't order it that way. But yeah, audiobook, which by the way was a nightmare. Never record an audiobook. It was an absolute nightmare. I'm never doing it again. Proud of the output, but believe me, you need to be paying £60 for it, wow, for the effort I put into it. So yes, please hunt me down at nathancassidy.com, and it'd be lovely to see you.
Well, I, for one, I'm really looking forward to coming to see your new show.
Thank you.
I'm coming to see it in about a month's time, I think it is, next month.
Yeah.
I'm going to be at the front of the queue. I think you're a major comic talent. You make me
Thank
laugh
you.
so much, and I wish you all the very best. Thank you so much for the interview today.
Oh, thank you, and thank you for everything you do for comedy as well, Richard. It's so much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my friend, and all the best to you.
All
Thanks
the best.
now.